On the day of the divorce, I discovered I had gained telepathic abilities. I heard my usually indifferent husband sobbing internally. What do I do? My wife doesn't want me anymore, but I don't want a divorce. Why? I was confused, but when I opened my eyes again, I found myself back in my sophomore year of college. He was still the campus heartthrob, rejecting my confession with a cold face, while internally he was cheering. I really love how my little darling looks when she's about to cry. So cute. In a fit of anger, I tore up the love letter I had written for him and threw it in the trash. This time, Euron was panicked. Let's get a divorce. I said this calmly at the dinner table, though my heart was aching with every breath. He didn't even glance up. Just eat your dinner and stop making a fuss. I laughed self-deprecatingly. Maybe to Euron. No matter what I did, it was just unreasonable noise. What I handed him, the pre-drafted divorce agreement. He was finally taken aback. If there are no issues, just sign it. He stared intensely at the 4 big characters on the cover, his trembling fingers clutching the paper. I thought to myself, he must be overjoyed. After all, for 9 years in college and 5 in marriage, I had clung to him like a sticky plaster, chasing him. If I hadn't relentlessly pursued him, he would never have agreed to marry me. Euron's disdain for me had long been ingrained in him, and over these 5 years, I learned that forcing something never makes it sweet. I also came to realize a harsh truth. Euron doesn't like me. No matter how hard I try, he never will. So I thought it was time to wake up from the self-deceptive dream. As Euron's cold lips parted, I expected him to say okay, but suddenly I heard a cry nearby. Ah, my wife doesn't want me anymore. What should I do? Waiting online. Very urgent. Did I make her angry, or is she on her period? Feeling down? No, wait, I checked. It's not her time of the month yet. Then what's the reason? Why? I was stunned, my eyes wide open. That voice was Euron's. But he had always been indifferent to me. Even if I begged him, he never called me in such a familiar way. Moreover, he never cared about my issues and had never shown any interest in me after marriage. How could he remember my menstrual cycle so precisely? It must be auditory hallucinations. But the next second, the voice roared again. Should I pretend to choke on my food and have my wife take me to the hospital to buy some time? But what if we go to the hospital? Why? Or should I break a leg? 100 days to heal. Every day counts. Now I was completely baffled. Because I was certain Euron hadn't spoken aloud. So, everything I heard was his inner voice. It was like he had completely turned into another person. I hesitated and was about to tentatively speak when everything suddenly went dark. If it's a love letter, then just forget it. I won't accept it. The boy's cool, emotionless voice reached my ears. I opened my eyes and found myself back in the familiar campus setting of my sophomore year. At this moment, I was holding a pink love letter. The 19-year-old Euron stood right in front of me. He lowered his gaze, looking at me with the same condescending and indifferent eyes. I finally remembered it was the day I had gathered the courage to confess my feelings to Euron. My second year of silently pining for him. Why aren't you speaking? His cold eyebrows lifted slightly, but his inner voice rang out again. Ah, is my little darling going to shed some tears? I love seeing her cry. It's really cute. Why? Strange. Why haven't her eyes turned red yet? Red eyes would make her look like a sad little bunny, so cute to kiss. A bold thought flashed through my mind, and I was instantly enraged. Could it be that Euron actually liked me too? But he's been playing hard to get, just pretending to be indifferent on the surface. So all these years of my relentless pursuit and various efforts must have looked like a clown show to him. Now my eyes were genuinely red, out of grievance, but out of anger. Euron, seeing this, maintained his composure, but his inner voice was now in a panic. Something's wrong. Why does my little darling look a bit angry? Should I agree for now? What if she's mad and never comes to find me again? He pressed his cold lips together, one hand in his pocket as if making a tough decision. He extended his other hand towards me. All right, I'll accept your love letter, but that doesn't mean I'll accept your feelings. I fought the urge to chop off his hand and sneered. Who said this was a love letter for you? He paused, confused. The next moment, I tore the envelope to shreds, just blocking my way to the trash. Idiot. I walked past him, tossing the paper scraps into the trash can behind him. The air was silent. I heard Euron's breath hitch. My little darling tore up the love letter I gave her. The sound of a snap echoed, like finger joints cracking. I didn't dare look back and hurriedly escaped. At the school cafeteria, I sat all day with my chopsticks, lost in thought for a long time, finally digesting the fact that I was back in college, 8 years younger. From Euron's reaction, it seemed like I was the only one who had come back. Kathy, look at the photo on the confession wall. A surprise shout interrupted my thoughts. My roommate really handed me her phone with a photo that someone had secretly taken. Ira looked panicked. The ease with which he had rejected me before was now replaced by him rummaging through the trash. Looking so disheveled, the comment section exploded. Everyone was guessing what could make the campus heartthrob so desperate. Only I noticed a hint of pink in one of the photos and scoffed. Show off. Where was he all this time? Something that makes Erin so concerned must be really important. Really sighed, resting her chin on her hand. In terms of looks, abilities, or family background, Erin is outstanding. Almost a prodigy. He has seen so many dazzling things. So, something that catches his eye and makes him care so much must be extraordinary. I thought about the years I spent around Erin. Aside from my sincere heart, I didn't seem to have anything else of value. But alas, a sincere heart is the least valuable thing. I smiled self-deprecatingly. Important or not, once it's in the trash, it's just garbage. It's not like that. The boy's cold voice protested urgently as my wrist was grabbed. I looked up instinctively, meeting those obsidian eyes. In the moment our eyes met, his gaze flickered with panic, and he hurriedly let go. I can't go through the trash. I can't touch her, but I've washed myself so many times. Will she think I'm dirty? I was speechless. Do you have something to say? Erin stared at me, his eyes slightly reddening. It's not garbage. What? He mumbled, and I couldn't make out what he was saying. Then he took out the love letter, now covered in tape. See, I repaired it. He looked at me with hopeful eyes. I raised an eyebrow. The letter was shredded into tiny pieces. Restoring it like this was indeed not easy. But, is this something you wrote for my dog, and you like it so much? I said coldly, not holding back. Erin's expression faltered, and the next moment, woof. Wait, Kathy, what's going on with you and Erin? You tore up the love letter you gave him, and he fished it out of the trash and put it back together. Does he like you too? Oh my, didn't you see him earlier? He was practically falling apart. Ha ha ha. As soon as I returned to the dorm, really rushed over to question me. She seemed to have uncovered some huge secret, her eyes shining with excitement, but as she laughed, she saw my indifferent reaction and was taken aback. She put her hand on my forehead, mumbling, "What's going on? Did your brain not burn out? Why are you not happy at all?" I tilted my head, avoiding her hand. I'm not sick. Really was shocked by my calmness. After all, from the first day of the semester, when I saw Erin, I was already smitten. Initially, it was my own secret. Later, really noticed my affection whenever I encounter Erin, and she found out about it. From her perspective, it was a good thing if the person I like also liked me back. But from my perspective, it was a heart that had remained cold for 9 years. Now that I knew he actually liked me too, it felt like a complete joke, leaving me unable to feel any joy. So I added, it's just that I don't want to continue liking him anymore. Wait, what? Really was once again stunned. I thought she would keep asking why. After all, my feelings for Erin had been so intense before. Now, saying I don't like him anymore was strange. But she suddenly pulled out 2 bar coupons from her pocket. Saturday event, $15 off with a $200 purchase, and 2 free beers. Want to go? What? She grinned and put her arm around my shoulder. Forget about all your troubles and worries. A drink will make you forget everything. Trust me, it works. PFFT. I couldn't hold back and burst out laughing. I took the coupons from Riley and we left right away. At the bar, as soon as I pushed open the door, the pulsating music hit me. The lights were flashing, the dance floor was alive with rhythm, and the air was filled with a luxurious atmosphere. I had asked Erin to bring me here countless times before, but he always turned me down with a cold face. I decided to go by myself, but every time I was halfway there, he would catch me red-handed. I seriously suspect that he just dislikes me and always tries to go against me. After all, he has been here a lot. What a typical double-standard guy. Damn it. Thinking back on everything, the more I think about it, the angrier I get. Bang. I slammed my glass down on the table with force, already feeling a bit dizzy. Hey, beautiful. Just had a breakup. A clear and pleasant voice came from beside me. I turned my head towards the sound, and the owner of the voice had just taken the seat next to me. Let that jerk go to hell. A beauty like you deserves someone better. He rested his chin on his hand and gave me a gentle smile. With his looks, he was a total puppy dog, and that sweet smile of his, it was like honey. As soon as he started talking, he knew how to cheer someone up. Really, sitting next to me, kept elbowing me and giving me knowing looks. This one's good. This one's good. Way better than Erin's icy face. There's a saying, isn't there? Men are like subways. If you miss one, another one will be along in 5 minutes. I was about to respond when I caught sight of Erin in the distance. He was approaching with a dark expression and striding straight toward me. I frowned for a moment. Wait. I sobered up almost instantly. By the time he stood in front of me, The temperature around us seemed to drop. One look from him made the puppy dog bolt away. "Hey, you." I had forgotten my drink. Before I could say anything, he had already disappeared. What? Still hung up on him. Aaron smiled at me for once, but the more I looked at it, the scarier it seemed. He gritted his teeth. "Do you want me to go get him back for you now?" No need to go through all that trouble. I shrank my neck in fear and shook my head frantically. I gave Riley a pleading look, and she immediately cried out, "Oh, I'm so dizzy. I think I might be drunk." Then she gracefully collapsed onto the table. I called your brother. He's here to drive you home, and he's already at the door." As soon as Aaron finished speaking, Riley shot up from the table. "All right, thanks. Farewell." No, I'm totally confused. In the next moment, I was lifted off the ground. Aaron had thrown me over his shoulder with one hand. "Put me down. What are you doing?" I struggled desperately until he smacked my butt. Smack. "Behave." My face instantly turned red with embarrassment. Aaron carried me through the bustling crowd. I buried my head and didn't dare to look around, afraid of drawing attention. When we reached the bar entrance, he tossed me into the passenger seat. The tall shadow completely enveloped me. As he leaned over me, my heart skipped a beat. "What are you doing?" I shrank back, crossing my arms over my chest and looking weary. Aaron remained unmoved, bracing himself on my side with one hand. His narrow eyes formed a dangerous arc as he coldly stared at me. It seemed like he was lost in thought, because I couldn't hear his inner voice, but I could tell he was angry. "Got some guts now, huh? Used to get drunk after half a glass. Now you can handle a full glass and even flirt with people." "Used to." My eyes widened in shock. Could it be that the Aaron in front of me is also Aaron from 8 years later? "Who are you to tell me what to do?" I shouted angrily as his skeletal hand suddenly reached around me. My heart skipped a beat, and I panicked, trying to escape. He wouldn't be so angry that he's thinking of hitting me, would he? Click. A crisp sound echoed as Aaron buckled me into the seat with a seatbelt. Without giving me a chance to react, he slammed on the gas pedal and drove off. The whole way, I was on edge. He drove to the apartment he had bought near the school. As soon as we entered, with the lights off, he pinned me against the entryway. "You really don't like me anymore." His voice, though seemingly calm, was laced with suppressed anger and sounded like an accusation, but with the moonlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, it cast a hint of grievance on his face. I found it laughable. He's the one who played with my feelings, and yet he's the one feeling wronged. "Yes, I hadn't liked you for a long time." I took a deep breath and smiled coldly. Aaron tightened his grip on my wrist, pressing further. "Then who do you like? That guy from earlier?" "Yes." I looked up and met his gaze. "Not only do I like him, but I also like many people. In any case, I won't like you. Hear me out. He leaned down and bit my lips fiercely, like a mad dog. I winced in pain and pushed him away with all my strength. He only laughed softly, his hot breath tickling my nose. "Didn't hear you clearly. Say it again." "I don't." He cornered me, his large hand gripping my waist tightly, leaving me no escape. After a long while, he finally released me. With tears in my eyes, I raised my hand. Smack. I slapped his face hard. Aaron didn't dodge, taking the full force of the slap. His face jerked to the side. He lowered his eyes, the bands falling over his brows, obscuring his thoughts. "Be gentle." Before I could withdraw my hand, he easily caught my wrist and pressed a light kiss into my palm. He looked up, his eyes reflecting my current state, and his own emotions remained unclear. "Your hand hurts. Look, it's all red." I grimaced and yanked my hand away. "It's like that torn love letter. Once it's torn no matter how much you try to piece it back together. It can never return to its original form." I coldly mocked. "Belated affection is worse than weeds." But he pulled out a complete love letter from his pocket. He handed it to me, his gaze becoming cautious. "I wrote a new one. See, it's intact now." At this point, I was speechless with anger. Is this supposed to be interesting? I even felt like laughing. "Why do you think I would be completely yours? You only enjoy me chasing after you whenever I try to give up. You only then selectively like me a bit. What do you think I am?" A hint of panic appeared in Aaron's eyes. "I didn't. I interrupted him. "You rejected my confession on the surface, but inside you wanted me to cry. Isn't that the case?" He was stunned. My smile grew colder. I just watched as his lies were exposed, but the grievance on Aaron's face only deepened. But loving someone means making her cry, right? I was confused and bewildered. Seeing this, he pressed his lips together and didn't speak. Instead, he turned on the lights in a living room and took my hand, leading me to another room. "Wait a minute," he said, taking a thick photo album from the top shelf of the bookcase. He dusted it off, and memories long sealed were opened. Loving someone naturally means wanting to know everything about them. But over the past 9 years, he had never mentioned anything about his parents. From dating to marriage, I had never even seen them. I tried to find out but got nowhere. Iran never talked about them, and after multiple failures, I just gave up. Now, the doubts that had lingered in my heart for years were finally about to be answered. This is my mother. He pointed to the woman in the photo. The background was a park, and she was holding it to her 3-year-old Iran. She was very beautiful, elegant and graceful. Her smile was gentle and full of light, but as the album progressed, her smile gradually faded, and the light in her eyes disappeared. This is my father. He pointed to the blank space where the photo should have been. If I guess correctly, this should have been a family portrait, but it was cut into pieces. There were other photos like this, some even showing signs of having been burned. At first glance, it was quite shocking. My mother loved my father very much, but he always made her cry. Back then, Iran was still too young to understand much, just learning to speak, but he could sense his mother's sadness. So he curiously asked why she always cried. She would hold him and cry even harder. She answered that it was all because of too much love. Loving someone could bring tears of happiness and also tears of pain. In the end, though, his mother's tears couldn't keep his father, and they chose to separate. They each started new lives and formed new families, and Iran became the obstacle and stain between them. They would give him a lot of money, but they would never give him much love anymore, even though at the very beginning, he was their most cherished treasure. Some people spend their whole lives trying to heal the wounds from their childhood. Iran seemed to have gotten used to living alone, being independent, but he still longed for love. But while longing for love, he didn't believe it could be loved. So he kept testing whether the other person will leave and found comfort in repeatedly pushing his partner away and pulling them back. You said before that you fell for me the moment you saw me on the first day of school. He looked up at me, his eyes flickering. But you don't know. That very moment, I too fell for you. The side of the bookcase slowly opened, and when it fully revealed what was inside, I was stunned in place. It was a huge wall of butterflies. Just one glance was a tremendous visual impact, and upon closer inspection, I realized that the pictures were actually pieced together. I walked over, and was even more surprised to find that almost every picture had me in it. This is from when we first met. I took these secretly while you weren't looking, Hiran said as he stood beside me, pointing to the topmost photo. Old memories suddenly began to assault me. That was the first day I reported to school, carrying 8 bags and dragging a 28-inch suitcase. I was hauling everything along, making a real scene. Even now, thinking back, it still feels incredibly embarrassing. When I caught a glimpse of you back then, I was stunned. You looked like a small, frail girl, and yet you had so much strength, Iran said with a smile, as if lost in a warm memory. As for me, I just wanted to find a hole to hide in. I was actually on my way to help you. And then, I asked, confused. I had no recollection of any of this. I didn't even know that Iran had noticed me before I noticed him. Your bags were so heavy that you didn't see me. The wheels of your suitcase rolled right into my foot. Iran paused for a moment, then continued. And then you gave a shove and ran over my foot. Now that rings a bell. I thought the wheels had gotten stuck on something, and since I was too lazy to move, I just pushed the suitcase through. Turns out, I have run over someone's foot. I was even more embarrassed. And this one, Iran said, pointing to the next photo. In the picture, I was alone, holding 3 ice creams. I thought you were buying them for friends, but I followed you and saw you ate all of them yourself, Iran said. A hint of envy in his eyes, he added softly, you really have a big appetite. No, you. I rubbed my forehead, feeling completely overwhelmed. And this, okay, enough, that's enough. I cut him off. Seriously, this is making me want to disappear. And besides, I was the one who confessed my feelings first, Iran said, causing my brain to crash again. When did that happen? I searched my memory, but I had no recollection of it. Seeing my puzzled expression, Iran pulled out his phone and opened his moments. The day before I gave him my love letter, he had posted a picture with the caption, "Under the same sky." I frowned. So, what does this mean? This was taken near the RD building. It was right around the time you got out of class. So if you looked up, you'd see the same sky from then. It's meant to be a romantic confession, don't you think? Iran looked at me with a joyful expression, like a child waiting for praise. I fell silent again. Dude, with a microscope, I still wouldn't have figured that out. But at that time, you liked my Moments post, so I thought you understood, Iran said. I twitched my mouth. I'd never been this speechless in my life. And I wasn't indifferent to you, Iran swallowed, his gaze becoming cautious. I know all about your likes and dislikes. I know your little habits too. For instance, when you're happy, you reward yourself with a strawberry cake. And when you're down, you comfort yourself with an even bigger strawberry cake. And then, there were things like the wedding venue decoration. The wedding, he had said he was indifferent, but it wasn't that he didn't care. Instead, a dedicated team had arranged everything according to my preferences, so we didn't have to worry about anything. But at the time, I had no idea, and was just pleasantly surprised that everything fit my taste. I had suspected that Aaron had given them some instructions, but he didn't seem the type. I figured I was just being overly sentimental, thinking too much. So why didn't you say anything? He knew everything about me, and I wanted to know everything about him too, but he kept himself locked away, giving me no chance at all. Even after 9 years, I couldn't even crack open a small gap. It felt so unfair. Of course, I thought he didn't love me, because I wanted to show you only my best side, fearing that the more you knew about me, the more you'd be disappointed. Aaron lowered his head, looking dejected. He said, meeting me was like a withered tree encountering spring, and someone who had once been bathed in light would never willingly return to the dark abyss. I reached out and cradled his face, looking into his eyes, and said slowly, but to truly love someone, you have to love everything about them. You love their brightness and you also love their brokenness. If you only love the superficial things, that isn't love. It's perhaps just a fleeting infatuation. It's a pity I understood too late, and learned it so clumsily, causing you so much sadness. Aaron gave a faint, bittersweet sigh, because only later did I realize that loving someone means being heartbroken over their tears. He lifted his hand, gently tracing the lines on the butterfly wall. He had woven these lines by hand, like a cage built specifically to trap this butterfly. If he could, he would want me to stay by his side forever. But if being close meant being close to sadness, he would rather cut these lines himself and let me go. Just like that night, when he made a wish on a shooting star, because he realized that over the years, I seemed not to be happy. Even my love for him went unnoticed. He knew all of this was his fault. So he made a wish on the star, hoping he could go back and give me another chance to choose, even if it meant he might lose me entirely. Kathy, he called softly, looking at me with deep affection. I've already told you everything about myself, so, will you still like me? Like this imperfect version of me. My thoughts were a bit disordered. It's true that I liked him. After all, after so many years of feelings, it's impossible to just let go and stop loving as if it were nothing. But the sadness I experienced was real. I'm sorry. I lowered my gaze, my eyelashes trembling uncontrollably. I don't know. At least for now, I can't give him an answer, and my answer was probably within his expectations. It's okay. He smiled, unusually gentle. Take your time. Time will give the answer. At least after laying everything out, we had a new and better understanding of each other. When it comes to feelings, Aaron was no longer so cautious. He finally learned to express himself openly, and to face his emotions and needs. He even learned to actively share all the good things he encountered with me. Though, his thick skin had become much thicker than before. On the basketball court, he took a hard fall. Just a moment ago, he had been patting his chest, saying it was just a minor injury, nothing serious. But as soon as he saw me, his face turned into a teary mess. Baby, it hurts. Blow on it for me. When we went out together, he had previously disliked sweets, but now he bought 2 cups of milk tea, one for each of us. Not only was it my favorite taro bubble tea, but also the flavor I usually ordered, with 3 parts sugar and less ice. I suddenly remembered that when Aaron and I first started dating, during our first outing, I was thrilled to buy 2 cups of taro bubble tea, eager to share my favorite with him. But Aaron spent the entire time frowning as he drank it and told me to buy it only for myself next time. I was very upset, because from his reaction, I couldn't tell if he disliked the tea or if he disliked me. It was too sweet, and I wasn't used to it. Aaron finally explained. As a child, he had enjoyed sweets, but after his teeth got cavities, he had been in excruciating pain, and no one cared for him. His parents had divorced, leaving him alone in a big house with only a nanny to take care of him. When a nanny left after work, he didn't know what to do. Eventually, unable to stand the pain, he called an ambulance on the landline phone. He was so scared, just a small child, so after that, he was afraid to eat sweets again. Seeing you looking so dejected, I realized I might have said the wrong thing, but what I meant wasn't what you thought, Aaron explained anxiously, gesturing wildly. I felt a mix of anger and amusement, so he tried to explain more earnestly. Really, believe me. All right, I believe you, I said. After spending so many days together, I could tell that many times, his words didn't match his feelings. It wasn't always intentional. What he meant in his heart often got twisted by the time it came out of his mouth. It was truly puzzling. Actually, that day, I ordered another cup of the same milk tea for myself. Gradually, he learned to accept it. It turned out that eating sweets wasn't as painful as he had imagined from his childhood. On the contrary, The sweetness could actually improve one's mood. He began to mimic my preferences and learn in many things that no one had ever taught him before. Like a clumsy child, he started to explore and try things slowly, following others' examples. I spent 9 years teaching him how to love. I showed him through my actions that everyone deserves to be loved. And to be loved, one must first learn to love oneself. So he gradually learned it. During the remaining 3 years of college, we focused on ourselves. We chatted casually as usual. In our free time, we would take leisurely walks on the playground, watching the sunset's last traces of red in the sky, feeling the evening breeze, and strolling at a relaxed pace. We reminisced about the past and talked about the future. On graduation day, he confessed his feelings for me in front of everyone at the ceremony, holding my favorite sunflowers. His eyes were full of intensity and deep affection. The sunflowers symbolized fidelity and silent love. "Kathy," he said softly, asking the same question he did that day. "So, do you still like me?" I looked at him and smiled brightly. This time, my answer was a definite yes. As soon as I spoke, the sun emerged from behind the clouds, casting its light down. The sunflowers in his hands glowed with a dazzling brilliance, warm and captivating. From that moment on, a brand new future began for us. This story has come to an end. Feel free to subscribe to the channel to stay updated with the latest content, with new novels posted daily.